Morning. When you enter high school, you encounter volumes of information across multiple subjects. You think about that information, you practice applying that information, and then you take tests or write labs to gauge your progress and understanding. At that point, though, you're not finished. You get the feedback about your performance on the test. You reflect on those parts of the subject that you understand and those areas that need more of your attention, and you devote time to addressing your weaknesses in order to do as well as you can in that subject. You might not fully master the class by the end of the school year, but that's the goal and that's the path you're on. In the athletic realm, the approach is much the same. You encounter schemes, principles, and design plays every season. You practice those plays and those principles, and then eventually you test yourselves by competing against other teams. Those games give you feedback about what you have achieved and what you as an individual or you as a team need to improve upon. You then devote time and practice to addressing your weaknesses while maintaining your strengths in order to put yourselves in the best possible position to succeed in any game situation. You may not ultimately master every skill or situation, and therefore you may not succeed in every game at the end of the season, but that's the goal, and that's the path you're on. I'm trying to imagine a scenario in which these approaches are rejected, in which people assume that young people will improve as students simply by being in school year after year, or in which young athletes will improve in their sport simply by playing that sport year after year. I'm sure many of you can think of guys who have grown bigger and stronger, but who have focused only on their strengths and have failed to improve their weaknesses. These athletes demonstrate that being around a sport does not necessarily lead to improvement. And so I'm confused when people think that character development is something that happens to you as you pass through high school. As if just being around people who demonstrate honesty and respect will somehow improve your tendency to be honest and respectful. The only way this happens is if each young man takes the time to reflect upon the values he observes in others and makes an intentional commitment to evaluate his own weaknesses and to participate differently in the world around him. If we need to intentionally practice speaking Spanish to improve, if we need to intentionally practice defensive slides to get better, then we also need to intentionally think about who we want to be, how we want to behave, and whom we want to surround ourselves with. This morning's quotation from Mark Edmondson argues that the best students take their lives seriously and figure out how to live them better. This point is true for academics, for athletics, and for moral and character development. In last weekend's film, one interviewee cited the more famous quotation by Socrates, "The unexamined life is not worth living," which of course means that if we fail to reflect upon our path in the past, our status in the present, and our direction in the future, then we are not making the most of our lives. It would be a mistake to imagine that last weekend's documentary was intended to show you what kind of man you need to be. I'm not going to pretend that The Mask You Live In was a perfect documentary or that it gave a balanced perspective on the topic of masculinity. But it would be wrong to spend our energy questioning the statistics in the film or otherwise trying to discredit it, as if whether a woman is sexually assaulted every 9 seconds or every 900 seconds changes whether we should pay attention to the issue. It would also be wrong to assume that we as a school want everyone to cry with each other, or that you all need to be a different type of man than the one you are now. This past weekend was not about giving answers about how to be a man or telling you what a man should be. Last weekend was about providing questions that we often fail to consider. The fact is that you students in front of me are good people, and I want to be clear about how proud I am of you as I work with you and live among you every day. We don't want to change you or fix you, and I urge you to imagine last Friday's film not as a lecture to you, but instead as a prompt for reflection and discussion. I mean, you're not in gangs, and any mistakes you make may not ever send you to prison. But to some extent, that's what makes these questions so important. You see, if you were bombarded by pain, suffering, and crime on a weekly basis, then you would construct a moral reaction to them and know how to prevent future occurrences. But you're not. And maybe you'll have only one chance in your life to help a girl who has had too much to drink. I don't want you to learn from that mistake. I want you to visualize that scenario now decide who you are, and do what is right the first time you encounter it. To help illustrate my point, I'd like to reference a story told by Carol Dweck in her book, Mindset. Dweck describes an experiment that she conducted with several students. As part of the study, the students were given various difficult questions from an IQ test. Upon collecting their answers, Dweck decided to praise students in one of two ways. She commended some students for their intelligence. Wow, you got eight answers right. You must be really smart at this. She praised others for their effort. Wow, you got 8 answers right. You must have tried really hard at this. For the remainder of the study, Dweck proceeded to track how the students who had been praised for their ability and intelligence performed in comparison to those students praised for their effort. What she found was that the ability students soon began to reject challenging new tasks. They wanted, in her analysis, to retain their identity as smart by receiving only those questions they could succeed on. As the study progressed, these ability students became frustrated when they answered questions wrong, and they reported feeling that the challenging tasks were not enjoyable. By contrast, the effort students sought out the hard problems and considered those the most fun. As Dweck tells it, the ability students lost faith in their identity as smart, so their performance and self-esteem plummeted. However, the effort students showed better and better performance because of their approach. Those who base their identity on ability or upon a certain status display what she calls a fixed mindset. They feel that a person is fixed as either smart or not, funny or not, athletic or not. On the other side, those who base their identity upon effort or upon process display a growth mindset. They believe a person's qualities are improvable, and he can learn how to be even more successful in the classroom, in social interactions, or in the sports arena. Because in sports, someone with a fixed mindset wants only to practice those things he already does well. He only wants to play against competition he knows he can beat. He needs the success in easier tasks to confirm his identity for himself. Someone with a growth mindset, though, seeks out areas of weakness in his game. He loves the challenge of conquering a drill that has exposed his weaknesses. He relishes the chance to compete against the very best so he can get better. The challenge for us is to develop a growth mindset in everything we do. If we have a fixed mindset, then we see the world improperly. We think that character is something you either have or you don't have. We think that someone is either a man or he isn't. You all have character, and you all are men. But can you improve? Can you be even 1% better each day as a student, player, and friend? Can you make your team or your class just 1% better each day? Again, the best of us are not the most talented, but they take their lives seriously, and they want to figure out how to live them better. Over the break, I took some time to think about my own life and how I can live it better. I thought about the values I hold dear and about the extent to which I display them. If I value integrity, how do I show it? How do I display empathy each day? On a basic level, I like to think of myself as a kind person, but how do I demonstrate kindness? If I get my wife a cup of coffee, or if I read an extra book to my kids, am I being kind? Or am I guilty of holding a fixed mindset by clinging to an identity I want to hold for myself? Or do I earn that identity every day and every week? It is easy in a place like this with our full schedules and various goals to become focused on our own lives and our own groups and to forget how to take care of others. I see, though, a meaningful thoughtfulness every day from dozens of students who say thank you as they leave class or leave practice. And just to be clear, I haven't always run a B block that is deserving of thanks. Sometimes I mismanage the time, sometimes an idea for class falls flat, but I still notice and appreciate the gesture of thanks. I would argue, though, that it would be wrong of me to assume that this is a student's duty to his teachers. If a teacher deserves thanks for trying to uphold his or her end of the contract, then a student deserves thanks for trying to uphold his end. And that is something I may not always take the time to do. So I want to close by saying thank you for bringing preparation and energy to your classes every day. Thank you for looking me in the eye and saying hello when you pass me. Thank you for trying to clean up after yourselves around campus. Thank you for being on time and respectful at dorm checking. Thank you for giving up your Wednesdays and Saturdays to represent Salisbury in competition. Thank you for working at cheering for our own teams instead of talking to the referees or to our opponents or their fans. Thank you for reaching out to students who might be lonely or isolated. Thank you for trying to follow the details of the dress code. Thank you for the kindness you show to the faculty and children on campus. And thank you for your willingness to engage in some challenging conversations last weekend. I know that we are at least 1% better today than we were last week. Thank you.